Mystery happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode 105, Magic Tricks in New South Wales between 1603 and 1868. So, if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out, or else there will be spoilers ahead.
I was going to. Sorry. Oh, I need a drink. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Pete Goddard and I'm here in the HHE studio with the swag man to my billabong. It's Mr. Ryan Weir.
That's right. I'm not going to do the accent this time. I still feel slightly humbled by doing it last time.
Yeah, that was an awkward moment, wasn't it?
It was.
But never mind. And of course we are joined as ever by the damnable didgeridoo dabbler. It's the judge himself, Mr. Paul Dursley.
Good afternoon.
G'day, Judge. Oh, I just did the accent.
You've done the voice. You can't stop yourself, can you? It is very alluring. Now, Ryan, I spent all last week fleeing killer magpies and the trauma has caused me to forget everything about the last episode. So, Ryan, I wonder if you'd mind reminding me what happened in about 60 seconds?
I can do that for you, but when do you want me to do it?
Now!
Alright, well, pick a card, any card, because this week Pete and I dealt out a full deck of trickery in New South Wales during 1603 to 1868. We kicked things off with kangaroos, killer goats, and the surprising dangers of going for a jog. Then I introduced John Henry Anderson, the so-called Great Wizard of the North, who braved hecklers, heartbreak, and hellish theatres to dazzle colonial crowds with bullet catches, dancing daughters, and a rabbit in a hat. But even the wizard's biggest illusion couldn't compare with that pulled off by the British Empire, because with a puff of legal smoke and the magic word terra nullius, they made an entire civilization vanish. And Professor Richard Broome joined us to confirm it. No battles, no treaties, just a simple, now you see it, now you don't. And all with a wave of a flag, as history was rewritten. So there you have it. It was magic, it was tricky, but most importantly, it was New South Wales.
Last week's episode done, summarised nicely, nice one son. Now we're over to young Dursley, who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dursley, the lovely Paul Dursley.
Yes, I remember it all now. You very much pulled the knowledge rabbit out of the hat. But what does it matter what I think? We're not here for me. We're here for the opinion of one man alone, Judge Dursley. So, Paul, before we go for the final verdict, can you tell us what your first impressions were of the magic tricks? Was that your card?
Yes, I suppose it was. However, they were two very different interpretations. So, we'll have to see how the scoring goes based on that.
Well, that's worrying. But I feel slightly concerned. I got a shiver down my neck there.
I think it speaks to how interesting our episode topic element is, because you can bring two different interpretations to the table. Otherwise, we would have both told lives of magicians, which I suspect might have been quite repetitive.
Yes, but you could have also used the time range a bit better. If you'd have found something earlier, you might have got some extra kudos.
Yeah, there was Thomas Pepper, the inventor of Pepper's Ghost.
Oh, yes.
You might be aware of this as the illusion that's often used in Disneyland and Disney World, where you see a ghost appear in front of you, and it's a combination of mirrors and lights and two-way glass and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, I know about the Pepper's Mirror illusion, yes.
Well, he's from New South Wales.
Didn't know that.
But his story was not quite as interesting as John Henry Anderson.
Well, this was very much the problem I had. I was looking at various magicians, and it was basically, there was a magician, he did some tricks, and then he stopped. I was really struggling to get that sort of sweep. What I really enjoyed about yours, Ryan, was that he had quite the ups and downs, quite the adventure, grand moments and his great disasters, and he had a full and fascinating life story. But there is a magician who is the first definitively reported magic show in Australia, anyway, reported by the Sydney Gazette and the New South Wales Advertiser from 1836. And this was a chap called Monsieur Dupree, also known as the Wizard of the South.
Ah, well, we spoke about him, didn't we?
The newspaper reports some surprising illusions are introduced, such as dancing a figure blindfolded amongst 9 eggs.
I want to give that a try. That sounds fun.
There's a bit less tension involved in doing that. Will they step on an egg, or will the knife go through her arm?
Well, yeah, we've definitely raised the stakes in the magic industry since, haven't we? Still, I'd watch that. I think there's tension in that. Is he going to step on an egg?
Well, apparently it was related to some traditional dance anyway. But yeah, that doesn't sound like the best part of the act, to be honest. He also did ventriloquism, etc., 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 which covers a multitude of sins, I think. But apparently Dupree's real name was probably Thomas Amott. He came to Australia as a convict in 1827. His conviction was for a couple of things. First, he stole a piano valued at £20. And secondly, he stole another piano.
Did you steal a piano?
Well, he's done it twice.
How'd you steal 2 pianos? Just slip that in my pocket and away I go. Twang, 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 twang.
You're rolling it down the hill. Ding, 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 ding. At least you could make a dramatic getaway like that. La, 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 da, 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 da.
All right, so during the episode, guys, I introduced John Henry Anderson, the Wizard of the North.
Absolutely. Sounded like a fascinating guy who had quite the ups and downs.
But there were some things that I left out. The first being that he was the first person to bring an elephant to Australia.
Oh, really? Was it from Denmark?
Great one, yeah. No, in 1853, he was performing in Sydney, and he had an act called The Birth of the Butterfly. Basically, the act was him dressed as a sorcerer, and he makes a horse disappear on stage. And the audiences were like, yeah, it's all right, but it's not wow. So he decides he's going to up the stakes by swapping out the horse for an elephant. Only there are no elephants in Australia, so he decides he's going to import one all the way from India. And it works. The act is a massive hit. Everyone's like, what is that on stage?
I feel like the trick is being overshadowed by the elephant here.
Well, yeah, a little bit, yeah. But sadly, they don't know what happened to the elephant after he left Australia.
Perished in a fire.
There were rumours, though, that suggest he just released it into the wild.
Oh, my
Never
Lord.
to be seen again.
One elephant on its own.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, one of the things we had to cut for time was my observation, as we discussed, that it was Captain Cook, or Lieutenant Cook, in fact, at the time, who discovered, in inverted commas, Australia, or certainly one side of it. Mm-hmm. But one of my interesting facts about that was that apparently Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, was a great admirer of Captain Cook, and it's believed that he used Captain Cook as an inspiration for the character of Captain Kirk, Cook.
James T. Kirk, James Cook.
Yeah.
It's pretty close, isn't it?
I always wondered that.
But the Endeavour obviously becomes the Enterprise. It's a scientific mission of exploration. So I wasn't able to find any definitive proof that there's this linear correlation, but it is known that that kind of age of exploration was an inspiration to Roddenberry. But that does raise the intriguing thought that Mr. Spock is in fact Joseph Banks.
Your favourite!
And so there was a famous saying, obviously, that to boldly go where no man has gone before is potentially inspired from Cook's journal, where he wrote in one time that he would travel farther than any man has been before me, but as far as I think it is possible for a man to go.
I mean, that's really close, isn't it?
It does feel, has the same feel, doesn't it? Well, Roddenberry had the good sense to shorten it a little bit. He was a bit loquacious, our man Cook.
Yes, but he didn't split the infinitive, did he?
He did not. What else you got, Ryan?
The Piddingtons.
The Piddingtons? Is this a children's television program about a small group of furry creatures?
Could be a disease. I've got the Piddingtons.
So Sidney Piddington, he was born in New South Wales in 1920.
That's a name to conjure with on his own, isn't it?
Isn't
Sidney
it?
Piddington.
Yeah, he's a nervy little teenager guy. He's got a severe stutter and he doesn't have many friends. So he joins a group called the Independent Magical Performers of Sydney.
Performance of Sydney.
Now, there he learns some tricks and he performs in various shows and he starts building a little name for himself as a magician. But World War II kicks in and he signs up for the Australian Army and is sent off to fight. Unfortunately, almost immediately, he's captured by the Japanese and kept as a prisoner of war for 4 years. Pretty tough time for our Sidney Piddington. But during this time, to try and keep people's spirits up, he was showing off his magic tricks and he staged these little magic shows that everybody loved. Now, one of the tricks that he did was a telepathy act.
I hate it here. What's this? You're thinking of the tunnel in the northeast corner of the camp?
Oh, damn.
Shut up, Piddington!
Anyway, yes. So after the war, Sidney returns back to Australia where he meets and marries a radio actress, a lady named Leslie Pope. Now, Sidney trains Leslie in the mystical arts of telepathy, and together they put on a telepathy act under the name The Piddingtons.
That's not very imaginative.
So they start performing across New South Wales. They get a bit of success and they were invited to go and perform in Europe. So they leave Australia, they travel to England where they find fame on BBC Radio. Now, it was here that their act got a bit kind of wild. They had these performances where Sidney would be in the studio with the audience and he'd ask them to draw an image or write down a series of words. Then he would communicate those words telepathically to his wife, who was not in the studio. She would be dialing in from various remote locations, like underwater in a submarine. Then they had another one where she was like the other side of the country. And then they also did one where she was flying in a plane. And I found the Pathé footage of it. So I'll play the recording of the actual act here now.
No, nice.
Off on a mystery trip from Filton Airfield, Bristol, goes a Stratocruiser. Its passenger of honour, Leslie Piddington, the female half of the husband and wife team who each week baffle 20 million radio listeners. This is to be their most exacting test yet. The object? To transmit a train of thoughts to Mrs. Piddington, 20,000 feet up, from a studio in Piccadilly, where before judges Hugh Williams and Gladys Young, Sidney Piddington opens the proceedings.
Are you ready for us over in the Stratocruiser, Gilbert Harding?
Yes, we are here, and here is Jean Gordon, a stewardess. What did you do to Mrs. Piddington a few minutes ago?
I searched her very thoroughly in spite of the cold. I made her take off everything. I looked in the padding of her jackets. I looked in her boots. I even looked in her mouth and her hair. And now I have her handbag, so I think you can be sure she's nothing hidden away anywhere on her person.
Well, here we are still rocking about, and back to you, Sydney, in Piccadilly.
Just before we crossed over to the Stratocruiser, I asked all of you in the studio here to write something down or to draw a picture or provide something to be used later in this program. And the enclosed contents will form the subject to be transmitted to Leslie. Is that all clear?
The subject to be transmitted is chosen at random. Can he transmit it to his wife?
A bird, someone talking, someone saying hello, a spirit, a bird, spirit, hello. Oh, I've got it, I can guess it. Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert. I think that's very nice. In fact, whoever thought of it? Hail to thee.
Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert.
Thank you.
I've got some questions about what exactly that air hostess was up to, Ryan.
Yeah. Miss Piddington enjoyed it.
She was determined to detect foul play and went well above the call of duty there.
I don't know. That sounds like TSA to me.
Oh, can I have the full Piddington, please?
Anyway, despite their popularity in the UK, they just suddenly quit. And they separate and divorce 2 years later in 1954, and you might think that this is the end of the Piddingtons. After the divorce, Sidney works a variety of different jobs for the next 20 years until one day in 1975, out of the blue, he receives an invitation to take part in a charity magical show at the Sydney Opera House. So he trains his new wife, his second wife, Robin, in the mystical arts of telepathy, and the new Piddingtons are born. They then go on tour, they make some decent money, enough to buy a manor house just outside of Sydney, which they convert into a tourist hotel. They run that hotel for the next 15 years, and the Piddingtons end. But what about Leslie, Mrs. Piddington, the one who was accosted on the plane by the air hostess? Well, after their divorce, aged 47, she meets and marries a new man, Cecil Jack Hazlitt, who at 74 years old is 27 years older than her. Right? Now, you might think this was just some money grab exercise on her part, but quite the opposite, because, and this is quite sweet, Leslie and Cecil spent the next 22 years together before Cecil died, after which she authored his life story detailing how much she loved him.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, I know. Now, while there are a few theories on how they actually did the act, nobody knows to this day how they did their work.
Maybe they were actually psychic, which would have been grim when they were going through the divorce, because then you're just sitting at breakfast and all you can hear is, I hate you.
Yeah. Do you want to get divorced? How do you know I was thinking that? Yeah. I wonder if on all of the, like on the submarine, whether she was checked by the sailors. Everywhere she goes, someone has to strip search Mrs. Piddington.
She's been frisked undersea, in the air. There's nowhere
no one even wanted to do it. She just insists on it. It's in her contract, apparently.
It must be frisked by a handsome sailor. That's very good, Ryan. Well done. The Piddingtons. Thank you, Piddingtons.
The Piddingtons. Now, Pete, you talked about the British using deception to magic land from the native people of Australia.
I did, and I was fully endorsed by Richard Broome, expert and real man.
Get it. Yeah. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yes, we will.
But, Pete, have you heard of the Bushland sovereignty movement?
I have not. Tell me more.
Okay. Basically, this is a bunch of people living in the outback of New South Wales that have read early colonial land laws and tried to use them to their advantage to enact their own personal land grab.
Turnabout is fair play. I did say it was a very live issue and that it was all based on this original trickery that left the door open to doubt.
Right. Well, basically, they are pointing to something called deserted crown land, which is an old law which says that if you find a truly remote, unused patch of crown land, you occupy it by building something on it and then openly declare independence, and defend it, or just avoid detection, for a year and 1 day, the Crown must abandon its claim on the land, and just like that, magic, you become the owner of a brand new sovereign state.
Oh, turnabout is fair play.
So you can make your own kingdom, is what these people have tried to do.
How's that going for them?
Well, so this is the thing. People have actually tried this. In the 1970s, there was a farmer named Leonard Castley, and he declared his 160-acre farm independent. Basically, he was upset with the state's wheat quotas, and he openly declared war on Australia when the authorities tried to serve him notices. Now, unfortunately, this war really just involved him firing his rifle into the air when officials drove up to his house. But this prompted them to call the police. The police came, and he was arrested and charged with firearms offences.
Yeah.
But in the 1980s, a small group of gold prospectors were out when they found a small, supposedly unsurveyed patch in the bush, which they called Snake Hill. And they just put up a sign. They declared the area a kingdom based on occupation, and they held a coronation ceremony for their king, which apparently involved lots of alcohol and a crown made from a car hubcap.
Quite right too. That's how you know you're the king of an Australian Australian province. Mind you, if the Dutch were nailing tin plates to a tree, then that worked. I don't see why hubcaps can't.
But sadly, the kingdom of Snake Hill was not to be. It only lasted a few months. The police visited the site after reports of a disturbance, and they found that the king had multiple outstanding warrants for his arrest. So they took him away and they just dissolved the kingdom. So sadly, you cannot visit the kingdom of Snake Hill anymore.
Oh.
So there you go.
All right, chaps, we have finally come to the end of the line, and it's time to step into the dock and prepare to face the People's Judge and risk transportation to Australia.
No!
I'd quite like that. Judge Dursley, are you ready to give your verdict?
Yes, I am.
Okay, defendants, please rise.
I've risen.
Your Honour, as ever, let's start proceedings by asking for your verdict on the factual content. Was it a smorgasbord of facts?
Well, it was a piece of two halves, as they might say. Sort of certainly, from your point of view, Pete, yes, those facts were given. A rather tenuous, in my opinion, link to magic. However, I will let it pass. And then on the Ryan side, sort of a more humoured set of facts about the Wizard of the North, which is something I'd never heard of.
Isn't it amazing?
Given his quite colourful life with ups and downs, I'm surprised about that.
And how famous he was as well.
Well, that's why I like to bring you interesting stories, Judge. Something new and fresh that perhaps you weren't aware of.
Yes, and you did that.
Yes! Sounds promising. So what is your grade for factual content?
Well, for factual content, I shall give you B.
Woo! Nice! Very nice indeed. All right, let's move swiftly on. Next category is, of course, as ever, entertainment value. Judge Dursley, did you have a good time?
I was generally entertained. I'll come on to something in a moment for the next factor. So I will give you C+.
Well, now you've trailed something interesting to happen in the next one. It's Dursley factor. Oh, what have you got? What's tickled your Dursley's fancy?
So I listened to this walking around the park and off to the shops, and sort of listening to it, I was sort of enjoying it. And then there was that running gag that you had about the card trick.
Oh yeah.
Is this your card? No.
And it was getting to the end, and I thought, they've missed the trick on that card trick gag. They've missed the trick. I'm going to really score them down on this. And then you had the coda. That wasn't it. And I was thinking, they have really missed it. I was really quite smugging up myself. You might find that quite unusual that I was smugging up myself. But then, of course, right at the very end, you did it.
Right at the very end.
Did it at the very end, even after the coda, it was there, and I had to sort of stop and laugh when I was walking.
We made him stop and laugh. That's good. So
that's great.
How does that translate to a grade for Dursley factor?
So for that and that reason alone,
D.
Okay, if you want.
No.
So for that, I think I will be rather generous and give you B+.
Ooh.
Beautiful.
But now we reach the final verdict, and before the judge passes his ruling, Ryan, you have an opportunity to enter a plea for us. If you choose to do so, make your plea now.
Pete, do you think I should make a plea?
No.
Based on guidance from my counsel, I choose not to make a plea.
I think that was a very good choice, because I think I was very much, as I'd given you something in the previous one, I was very close to taking something away.
Well, moving on, Your Honour, the defendant stands before you. Have you reached a verdict?
It sounds like listening to an audiobook speeded up. Although I don't. I actually slow them down because you get more of your money's worth.
Top tip there from Judge Dursley.
There you go. Get more for your audiobook buck.
Don't do it less than 0.9 though, because sometimes they actually speed them up.
Pete, tweet that.
Tweet it immediately. Top tips. Now, Your Honour, the defendant stands before you. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and then I ask, hat in hand, for your verdict.
So, I think I shall give you a straight B.
Yay!
Nice.
That's a good
Nice.
grade. We like that.
Nice.
How do you feel, Ryan?
I feel great, mate. Let's celebrate, Pete, by singing Home and Away. Home and away. With you each day. Beautiful. Thanks, man.
All right, everybody, that is our show for this week. If you would like to get in touch about anything we've talked about or just say hi, you can reach us on social media through our website, hhepodcast.com, or email Pete and Ryan at hhepodcast.com.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from Didgeridoo.
Hey!
And you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
And you definitely will if you rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever platform you use.
If you're on Mastodon, Facebook, Instagram, or X, you can find us at HHE Podcast. And if you subscribe to those, you're going to get an alert every time we post any trivia tidbits, news, and photos of cute wallabies.
And we'll be back again soon with our next episode, number 106. Divorce in Estonia during the Ottoman Empire. And in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
Felicitations.
And that's it. All I guess. That's it. That is it. That is it. And that's it. And that's it.
He's stuck in a loop.
That's not it. And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
Oh, go away.
Guys, I have a question.
Ask away.
Do unidentified flying objects count as magic tricks?
No.
But do they?
No.
But do they?
No.
Well, arguably, yes, because they don't exist, so it has to be a magic trick.
Exactly. It's deception. It's an illusion. Or is it? Or is it real?
No.
Well, in October of 1868, a newspaper in New South Wales called the Cumberland Mercury reported that a surveyor called Frederick Birmingham witnessed a close encounter of the third kind.
Face to face.
Exactly right.
Or face to whatever.
Or face to a tentacle, yeah. So apparently, Frederick met, in quotes, a neutral coloured spirit near his home who abducted him, transported him aboard a floating ark, you know, like Noah's Ark, that was apparently filled with paper and then was taken to the highest point of Parramatta Park before being returned back to his home where he woke up in the morning. Now, he said that this entire event happened with incredible speed and silence. 5 years later, he also saw another UFO in Botany Bay.
He
said
did.
this.
The same guy.
Same guy, yeah. He said he observed a bright whirring light in the sky that moved erratically before vanishing.
The second visitation makes me more inclined to believe he had some form of visual impairment. But maybe he didn't. Maybe it was UFOs, Ryan, that nobody else could see, and they abducted him, showed him their paper collection, gave him a lift to the top of the nearest hill, and took him back to bed for some reason.
Anyway, there you go. UFO facts. End of podcast fact.
Recorded
I think
human
what
history.
we can conclude from this is that UFOs do count as a magic trick. Therefore, let's move on.
Move on. Let's move on. I'm happy to move on. Mr. Dursley?
Yes, go. Please move on.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Well done, Durs.
Well done, Durs, indeed.
Does anybody actually listen to this still?
No.
Only just an excuse to get together once a month for chat.
Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like?
Yeah.
Smash subscribe?
Yeah, that's what people say.
Do they, though?
Yeah, only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.